everyone defines success differently. They could define it by the pedigree of the school or the paycheck. My definition of success has always been on students and student impact and student success and student outcomes.
Settling in and understanding who you are and what you want sometimes will be that North Star to guiding you to what it is that you really need to be doing and should be doing.
What if the story of higher education wasn't written in budgets or spreadsheets or accreditation reports, but in the space between people? In the instincts they follow, in the moments when a career bends not upward, but toward meaning. At the EACUBO Annual Meeting this year, Howard sat down with two leaders who embody this subtle, often overlooked truth. Bill Guerrero and Nico Washington are not simply navigating the uncertainty roiling higher education right now. They are doing something braver. They're reframing it. For them, professional change isn't a threat to be managed. It's a curiosity to be explored. Uncertainty is the terrain on which we march. In this conversation, you'll hear how a first-generation baseball player turned CBO navigates toward impact by following where the puck of challenge is moving. You'll hear how a former NSA analyst brings empathy and intuition to the heart of institutional partnerships. And you'll hear a shared conviction that leadership today requires something deeper than technical skill. It requires the courage to be human first. This is Navigating Change, and today we're stepping into a story about work and purpose and the quiet confidence that guides us forward when the path ahead is anything but certain. And now, Howard Teibel, Bill Guerrero, and Nico Washington.
Thank you, Pete. Welcome, Nico, and welcome, Bill. How are you both?
Great. Doing well.
Tired? Excited?
Both, actually. Both.
Yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to start with a lightning round, ridiculous question. You ready? If you could have any superpower for one day, we asked this to everybody we podcasted with this week, what would it be? Again, one day. What would you pick?
I would be able to sing acoustic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can learn a lot about people where they want to go.
I have the microphone in front of me. I mean, it looks like, if I can riff something right now and people are walking into the trade show.
I might change mine now. I like that. Nico?
I'd be Oprah Jr.
I love it. All right. Set number 2. If you can go back in time to any time in history, where would you want to go?
I probably want to go back to the ancient Greek times.
Why is that?
I just think it was really fascinating how they were so innovative and creative and just amazing things from historical moments that were happening. So,
very nice. All right, you had a second to think about this.
Yeah, I would say if I can go back in time, my sports teams are struggling lately. My Yankees and my Cowboys have not won either their Super Bowl or World Series in probably almost 20 years for each of them. So I would like to go back to last year when Judge makes a catch, change that, makes the catch in the World Series against the Dodgers and the Yankees win.
Very specific. You dream about this.
Yeah, it's a painful time for our fans.
Yeah, mine's a lot more basic.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the dinosaurs.
Oh.
Which is like ridiculous because we can't do that. We can't do any of this, but we wouldn't be able to survive back then. All right, here we go. Bill, you went from CFO positions at Bridgeport, Springfield, Ithaca, Albertus Magnus, and now Senior Associate Athletic Director for Financial Affairs at UConn. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I would tell you, when you list those schools, and then there's certainly an additional 15 years of my career at, a big SUNY school for 13 years, where those first 13 years encompassed not only running the entire operations of a university, it included teaching, and it included being the head baseball coach. So at a Division III baseball program. And so at these other institutions that you listed, everyone has different portfolios. At half the time, I had athletics report to me, and what that's called is an ADR. And so I graduated from UConn in 1993. So a long time ago, certainly dating myself, but as a lifelong and proud alum. And then when you think about your service learning or service passions about giving back, what better place than the school you graduated from, that you met your wife at, all your dearest friends, to say, wow, what an opportunity to mirror or blend your passions with, which is athletics, UConn athletics, financial experience, to what I would say is always follow the puck of challenges in higher ed, which is what I've done, is follow the puck on the challenge of UConn athletics or all of higher education, where their challenge is this post-house settlement and processing and managing revenue share.
See, you took the words right out of my mouth about passion, because what I think so profound about the shift for many people here that work as CFOs, that there's always this view of bigger, higher up hierarchy. And what I think you have done is you have married up what you care about deeply and your competencies and your skills. And it's less about status and more about what you care about.
100%.
Tell us about your story, Nico.
It's very interesting. So before higher ed, I actually spent nearly a decade at the National Security Agency working on contracts and financials. And I transitioned into higher education nearly 30 years ago, working at the Johns Hopkins University. So what I have tremendous pride in is my journey of starting at the very beginning.
What was your first role at Johns Hopkins?
So my first role was a senior academic program coordinator. So I worked on the development of professional master's programs before they were really popular in 1996. And I'm still seeing institutions catching on to this idea of developing these professional programs that are practical, that, support the workforce in a different way. So it's been exciting to watch the evolution, but be a part of some of the original creation around the work. So my career really was a very long educational process of just learning myself. So then I transitioned to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, again in the junior role, doing program administration. And I was able to evolve primarily on the academic side. So I landed in the academic affairs division, where I spent the majority of my time in higher ed. I was an associate provost for finance and reported directly to the provost. So what was interesting about my career is I had an opportunity to really marry together the administrative affairs side and the academic affairs side in a very complementary way that has been very helpful to my career as a CBO, because now I have a lens from the faculty and the academic side of the house that I'm able to bridge together. And what we all know is that partnership between president, chief academic officer, and chief business officer is so critical. And the value add for me was sitting on the other side for so long, and to be able to carry that with me throughout my career has been amazing. And it's just valuable insight that not every CBO gets to have.
You talk about lens, but it's also a deep appreciation for the academic side of the house so that you can effect change. Because I think what we're learning more now than ever is that if we don't affect partnership and change and treat each other as partners, we can't move this vision we have for higher education, especially with the challenges we have, forward. Did you want to add anything to what she was sharing?
I think it's so important that what Nico just, first of all, super, super impressive, but having the deep understanding of the academic side is more critical than ever. More often we talk in these meetings about the importance of the role with partnering with the CIO or partnering. Yeah, it could be athletics, but with enrollments. But rarely are we talking enough about the partnership with the provost when we are all being pressured to talk about academic program review and those budget cuts that are following, and having someone like Nico and her expertise that can speak the language. I think it's so critical. I say in my past CBO experiences, I would always say, hey, I've been in the classroom. I've been in the classroom more than most people, and in all modalities and all sessions, and to be able to talk about those experiences and those challenges, even if it's with the LMS or just student experiences, it makes me more credible to talk about budgets and so forth. So what Nico said, I applaud what her perspective is. I think it's going to be immensely helpful to others as well, not only in her great career.
You know, when I started, I was making a joke when I said, "What were you thinking?" It's really pointing to something that I think the two of you in different ways can be mentors to others. Because what I see a lot, and I'm curious if you see this too, is that people struggle with what's my next opportunity, and they can fall into a mindset that I am now considering something that could feel like a demotion, or it's not leveraging stepping up. And I give you so much credit for recognizing this connection between what you care about and the skills you bring, whether or not and how it's perceived as moving up the chain. What do you say to people who come to you with that, like, what do I do next?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question, and certainly in my career, been in 8 institutions, all at the C-suite level, and none of them are generally name brand schools that people would aspire to go to or say they are there. And I would just say everyone defines success differently. They could define it by the pedigree of the school or the paycheck. And I would say in one sense, I'm unfortunately or fortunately not wired that way. My definition of success has always been on students and student impact and student success and student outcomes, and I would say that stemmed from my very first days, working with mentors. And certainly for me, I was a first gen. And I was just lucky that I was
in your family. You were first gen?
First gen,
Wow.
Massive family. Mother raised 5. I was the only one of 5 to go to college. The only reason I did was I was just good at athletics.
What'd you play?
And I was a baseball player.
Okay.
And frankly, at the end of the day, not even that good of a baseball player.
Good enough, though.
But good enough to say college was an option.
Yeah.
And so that opened up opportunities that allowed me to shift my focus. Ultimately, is why I'm in higher ed. Is about what impact I can have on students. At the end of the day, yes, the academy, I want to keep people's jobs and so forth, but my definition of success is what impacts I have on students every single day. And that's really what I yearn for and look for in my decision-making or where I'm working. So that's kind of when I say follow the puck, where's the biggest impact on students?
And what's beautiful just hearing the story now is that recognizing that the nature of your work does put you more naturally around students, whereas many of these CBOs don't get that opportunity. So it gives me even more of an insight about why this keeps you connected to what I know you care about deeply. What do you say to people who are looking at, what do I do next?
Yeah, so I always follow my gut and intuition in decision making. It's always been very helpful. Again, as Bill said, I'm too a first generation college graduate. But in addition to that, in terms of just how I lean into people, I go into my own experience. And I was a teen mom, and I went to a community college, and I had a very non-traditional approach through college. I always had to work full time. So again, there was always this idea of learning and knowing how to lean into good decision making, but also trusting my gut. And I've trusted my gut in a way that it hasn't failed me yet. So I tend to lean into it a bit more. So I think sometimes settling in and understanding who you are and what you want sometimes will be that North Star to guiding you to what it is that you really need to be doing and should be doing, but you'll feel it more than anything and you'll struggle with it. But I think at the end of the day, but then you have these things like, salary, you have these things like what do others think that impact those decisions. But at the end of the day, I think your gut and intuition really guide you through that process and just your interests. What are you interested in? Because we can have great jobs and do great at them, but if the interest isn't there, it's not going to hold you but for so long before you're starting to venture off into another direction with the question of what do I do next? Because it's not holding you. Yeah.
See, the two of you get me thinking about this principle we teach in our leadership program called Ikigai. Have you ever heard of this principle called Ikigai?
I have not.
It's 4 dimensions, and I think you'll connect with this. What you love doing, what you could be good at, what you can generate money, and what the world needs. And as I listen to the two of you, I think you're living this in your own way. And what I love about that is, and I think the reason that's important to say is because not everybody is. A lot of people struggle. They're good at what they do. They make good money, but they don't love it. They love it. They're good at it, but they don't feel like they're generating enough revenue for themselves. And being in that place, it's a privilege.
Yeah, I would say, when I do, even like for a new job or whatever that might be, including mine, and you think about in that kind of paradigm, and if you put it in a Venn diagram almost and see, you're talking about 4 different circles and what is that centerpiece, I do that in any assessment. And so when I think about, let's say, where I am today, I have my university, I'm an alum, and donor and, season ticket, all those kind of things, CFO experience, athletic experience, and then athletic administration experience. So you put those 4 circles together, you're like, this is a perfect job for you. And so that's kind of the thought process. But if one of those circles becomes more challenging, that's where I think your prior question is like, when you're like, oh, what's my next, because is it really truly fulfilling? Because, one thing, like, as we started off this conversation, when you kind of reflect on where your greatest happiness is and these kind of different definitions of success, my first 13 years in higher ed was running operations of a university, being a baseball coach, teaching 2 classes a semester. And then I had different entrepreneurial ventures going on to make my school sustainable. Those are my 4 circles that in a Venn diagram was like, that is, to me, I have to refine that, try to continue to find that. And I'm almost there. So it's a great perspective on you kind of mapping it out that way.
Yeah, and to recognize when things are not where you want them to be and whether you need to do something about it. Because, I'm okay that everybody has all 4. I don't accept when people just have 2 of those and they settle. And I understand we got obligations. It's hard to leave jobs. But the reason I think talking to the 2 of you is so important, especially for this EACUBO audience, is for people who are sitting in unhappiness or frustration, and what do they do about it? And the 2 of you, it's like when your gut hits you, it's time. So that's such a fantastic way of being. How do you approach professional change with a mindset of curiosity versus resistance? Because people can get stopped really quickly when they see something that looks like it could be a challenge, and they can lose their curiosity. And I know from you, Nico, that this is a core principle for you.
Right. So when I'm stepping into something new, whether a new position, new responsibilities, I'm often beginning that experience with curiosity because it allows me the opportunity to lead with a bit more of compassion, a bit more empathy, a bit more care and concern, because I'm taking it in as opposed to giving things away. So I'm bringing it in a way that my emotional intelligence is heightened a bit. So that idea of curiosity allows me to listen more than I'm talking. It allows me to understand before, articulating any type of thought that I might have about a thing. So it really gives me the opportunity to lean into an organization or a role in a way that I'm giving myself the proper pace, the proper time to fully build, that connection with the folks that I'm around.
And what I've seen in you, as long as I've known you, is that, and you said it here already, is trusting your gut. Like, you do have a tuned in sense to, does this feel right?
Right. And I would say a part of that also is when you're coming to an organization or really just enter into the workforce at a very young age, you have this sense of empathy where you almost can situate yourself into so many places as a result of just your path. So I'm very mindful of that as I move around in different roles and positions because I remember being in those places and spaces. So it's not just about the decision or the new experience, but it's about the impact that I'm about to make with the full audience in mind. And that has been really helpful and has really allowed me to strengthen relationships that I see some CBOs struggle with because I'm being vulnerable and I'm being authentic in the way that I've been there, done that. And it just creates a different experience where we end up with a different type of relationship. So it's very cool to have been there.
I love it. I love it. Bill, how do you approach professional change with a productive mindset?
Yeah, just still processing what Nico just shared. I mean, again, I was already a fan of hers before. Now I'm a super fan because, words that she just used, emotional intelligence, empathy, authenticity. When you think about those areas of having compassion and trying to go through, let's say, John Cotter's 8 steps of change, when you go through those things, and I would say I'm unusual where I am completely comfortable with change. Either duties assigned that happens sometimes in our positions, or just having the ability to go through many different organizations. I've been successful in every single organization. So I sit with change, comfortable, but also with everything that Nico said is that I can't assume everybody else is good or comfortable with change. So I have to really balance that with using certainly my 2 ears as opposed to my one mouth. And when I join a new organization, but I also, when I say I balance it, is because I have a pretty, I would say, solid playbook in going into a new organization to achieve financial sustainability. So I have those skill sets. And so I have this one side that I have a sense of urgency because I know it will impact students in financial sustainability of an organization. But I also understand that to make sure things happen in an appropriate enough time is that I utilize all those tools that Nico mentioned to create the collaboration. And maybe it's, the term that higher ed maybe uses at exhaustion is shared governance, but the collaboration to execute things relatively quickly in a short period of time. So even having been at so many different institutions in the last, let's say, 8-9 years, the degree of success and execution has been using those skill sets and trying to process change in other people's eyes. And so that's where the empathy comes in. It's like, okay, what I'm going to ask for, they're going to want to know what's in it for them. For them to get them, help them to move to a grander vision that will achieve greater results for the entire institution. They still want to know what impacts them.
Yeah. But behind your skills is another thing that I think that's true for the two of you is confidence. Because the confidence from previous experience and success really rubs off on others. It's what produces the trust. All right, so we're going to pivot to something else here, which is a big question, but how do you approach this? So how are you approaching these uncertain times? Because this is a big question for all of us.
I'll start because I think it's an a perfect question for where we are in higher ed and just, the world at large. But I approach the uncertainty, as I approach everything in my life. And that is, really believing that this too shall pass, and that this challenge and these challenges come with evolution and time. And we've been able to make it through before, we'll do it again. So to lean into innovation, to lean into creativity, to lean into all the great things that we're capable of as humans really just gives me a level of confidence about uncertainty that I'm confident that we too will get through this thing. But in particular around higher education and uncertainty, it's really bringing folks along and allowing them to lead with a level of confidence as well, that we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know, and we use our data to support us, and we just keep moving and reactivating and resetting. And it's a continuous improvement process that we do very, strategically and thoughtfully until we get to the other side.
Yeah, I love this. Because, in pivoting to you, Bill, the thing that I hear from you, Nico, is it's not about creating certainty. It's about recognizing, like you said, what we know and don't know, and actually helping people understand it's okay that some things are uncertain. That's life. I mean, we all know that, but somehow we can fall into a different mindset. What about for you, Bill? How are you dealing with these uncertain times?
Yeah, and again, I'm, probably wired slightly different on things. I'm comfortable in uncertainty. I think life is too short. I think I try to live day to day.
Amen.
I am super blessed to have a wife that works in the medical field, and that's kind of my guiding principle. I see the challenges that she manages and deals with. No doubt we're not dealing with life and death situations, but we're dealing with trying to really help students and our employees and our surrounding communities to make positive change and so forth. And how do we get there? But, so I take that kind of perspective, though, in my decision making in uncertain times to try to do the best we can. But I use students as my guide. And, it goes back to my times and how I got helped through everything with students. But to help as a student and then to help students is, the decisions we make as CFOs to create affordability, accessibility, and then our responsibility to try to preserve jobs in this industry and how those go hand in hand. So that's how I kind of manage those decision making during uncertain times. And so, because as Nico said, I mean, we're going to get through it, because if it wasn't, let's say, in athletics, we're going through this whole massive change in Division I athletics, or if it's, federal government changes and talking about research grants, or we went through COVID. And we can go back through many other challenges. Now it's going to be the demographic cliff that everybody knew about for 5-6 years is, having partners like you and your firm, not trying to give you that shout out, but you can give us a shout out. Yeah. I mean, but it's a reality is giving, these stakeholders, these clients, these institutions of higher ed, the skill sets to deal with uncertain times, because when people are uncomfortable in uncertain times, and then they get very defensive and protective, and those two things are the death of innovation. And Nico mentioned it as well. She mentioned innovation. We need to be innovative. We have to be innovative. If that's AI that forces us, or if we're just going to use our own collective creativity. And Nico mentioned working with the academic affairs, they're brilliant. The amount of ideas that I've worked with my academic units that came up with the ideas, not just new academic programs, but new entrepreneurial ventures, has been amazing in my career. And so if we kind of take off those barriers, take off those kind of resistance to change, or if it's just because, I'm afraid of my job, losing my job, if we could get rid of those kind of things, we could do wonderful things in this industry and continue to survive, but not survive, thrive.
Beautiful.
If I could just add one other thing, as I think about the role of a chief business officer, I'm thinking beyond finance. And when you look at the portfolio of a chief business officer, the functions that live within that portfolio are so vastly different that you have uncertainty just about every day in your job, whether it's campus safety, whether it's IT, whether it's a human resources matter. You don't know whether it's a policy change in any one of those, cybersecurity, whatever it might be. So truth be told, the CBO role lives in a level of uncertainty that I don't think we ever escape. I think what changes in the climate that we're in now is in the stories that we're allowing ourselves to tell each other about we're experiencing, because the uncertainty is common. That's the common denominator. It's the storytelling that we're telling around the uncertainty that's elevating and changing how we're responding in a way that is either creating crisis moments or urgency or not. But the truth of the matter is we live in this space and we are adaptable to change every day. So I honestly think if we can lean in to really build that confidence beyond ourselves, to have others understand that we can do this, we have done it, and we do it on a regular basis, will be remarkable, because that chief business is, CFO, we use that term loosely. I don't operate with the CFO role primarily. I use the CBO role because I am wearing so many hats all the time that I need folks to understand that it's not just about the finances, it's about all the above, and that matters.
It's interesting. I'm going to say before we wrap up, what I think the two of you do beyond the designation is you lead with being a human being. And it comes across. And I just want to say this industry, this association is lucky to have both of you, that you care so deeply in what you're doing. And I'm inspired by the work you're two doing. So thank you so much for being willing to share your perspective for this. Really.
Thank you for letting us be a part of it.
You're welcome.
Good.